dreamt for so long. My flesh was dull gold, and my blood rotted. Corpse after corpse left in my wake, as I awaited his return. Heed my words. I am Malenia, Blade of Mikola. And I have never known defeat. I am Malenia, Blade of Mikola.
Welcome back to Elden Ring at level 1. Today I'm going to attempt Malenia, Blade of Mikola. This will probably be the final video in this series, unless I decide to do the DLC, which will probably not happen anytime soon. Either way, in this video, I am not going to teach you how to fight Malenia. Why? Because there are at least 1,000 better videos on that, and also because I want to try something a little different in this final video. I want to end this series talking about what it means for me to play these games and offer a different perspective on the gameplay that I haven't seen before. To start this off, I'll just explain my strategy when going into the fight. My main goal for the first 50 or so deaths simply to see what I could get away with and which attacks I could strafe. After getting used to her speed, the key is to develop muscle memory to all her combos. This basically sums up the entire fight. It might not sound like that much. It might sound like I'm making it out to be too simple and easy. But trust me, it took me just about 24 in-game hours to actually beat her. So the reason for the lack of tips is because I didn't really find an easy way to beat her at all. At least not with my setup. Now let's move on to the real reason for making this video. In my opinion, hope perfectly symbolizes Soulsborne games. There are many interpretations of the philosophical elements of these games. A simple YouTube search will show you countless philosophical breakdowns of every Souls game. In my opinion, all of them are partly correct. All Soulsborne games are for the player to experience and interpret for themselves. There is no definite answer. To this day, we don't really know who the furtive pygmy was and what exactly the Dark Soul means or even is actually. And we might never really understand the truth about the pale blood. Similarly, it's difficult to understand the motives of the outer gods in Elden Ring. After scraping through hundreds of item descriptions, cut content, and dialogue, we still haven't really figured it all out. I often hear people joke that they will simply watch Vatividia or any other popular YouTuber, Souls YouTuber, to understand the lore. Although they do dig deep, they also often end up speculating many major plot points, which later spread around the community as common knowledge. I believe we should venture out into the story ourselves and interpret what each dialogue or item description means. The power of Soulsborne games is often written with intentional gaps for us to fill. It is in filling these gaps that we uncover our own truth that we follow and make decisions upon. The truth that we find in filling the gaps allows us to choose the right endings and the correct choice for the future of the world, the future of our world. It's our choices, and they're only correct because we interpret the world in that way. Every Soulsborne game has a player be an insignificant character in a wider world. We are not likely to succeed and are often underestimated or overlooked as an individual. For example, in Dark Souls 1, we are an undead that is destined to link the fire. We later learn that we are among many who are given this task. We as an individual are not of importance. Over your playthrough, you will encounter a variety of undead trying to achieve the very same goal. Only one among the undead is going to link the flame, at least in each cycle. This means that all the undead and hollows are insignificant and overlooked. For many people, the takeaway is that you're not special. I believe the game wants you to believe the opposite. You, as a player, know that you are the main character. Among all the undead, you are special. This feeling that you must be the one to fulfill the prophecy pushes you throughout the game. Unless, if you meet Frampt, you realize that it was, after all, just a ruse to trick the undead. And then again, you're back in that cycle. You're not that special.
I am Malenia,
If not you, then someone else.
Maid of Mikola.
There's plenty of skilling to choose from after all. After playing this Souls game, you might realize that you don't really have a choice. You can't actually affect anything. Souls games almost always follow this pattern. First, you're given the freedom to choose the fate of the world and do what you believe is right. Later, you realize that no matter what choice you make, it doesn't really affect anything. At the end of the day, the fire and darkness is a cycle. After a while, even after giving up the flames, letting it die down in Dark Souls 3, you are hinted by the Firekeeper that in the future there will be new flames that will come back and renew the cycle. Maybe 4 new lords come about and start the entire cycle of Dark Souls 1 to 3 again. Elden Ring, however, drifted slightly from this. You, as a Tarnished, have the option to choose the lands between's future. You can either continue the Golden Order or mend the Order using different runes to change the world as you see fit and just. On the other hand, you can choose to defy the Order and help Rani start an entirely new age. Going even further, you can burn everything to the ground if you feel like the lands between isn't worth saving. Here, your choices feel more permanent than before. Alas, you are still stuck under the influence of the outer gods. Just like the gods of Bloodborne, the most you can accomplish is to switch ownership of the lands between. I'm not sure I'm using the right words, but this duality between the choices and the sense of helplessness might seem depressing to many. The game gives you false hopes all the time and then stomps all over your ambitions. But why am I even talking about this? Sure, the world is depressing and we don't have any control. How does this matter? Am I just trying to say that it's not worth it? Actually, not really. It matters to me because this aspect of the game
I am Malenia.
helps articulate what it means to be hopeful to me. If you search up the word "How Dark Souls Saved Me" or "How FromSoft Saves You" on YouTube, you will find dozens of video essays about how playing Souls games helps them recover from depression or other mental runs. The Souls formula of trial and error and the intentionally high difficulty have the greatest contribution to this. Like the creator of the series, Hidetaka Miyazaki said, he wanted gamers to feel like they accomplished something when they progress through the game. When you feel like you're lost in life, when you feel yourself losing control, when no matter what you do or try, you're only met with failure, Souls games can save you. When other games give you an easy mode when things get hard. Soulsborne doesn't. Just like real life, there is no switch to turn the game into easy mode. You can see and feel your progress every time you play. FromSoft, FromSoft can actually make you believe that you can succeed on your own merit. Your effort isn't wasted. You can hope, even when facing a literal god, that you can win. This hope is at the core of the Souls experience. This brings me back to the story. Just like the gameplay, you are given hope that you can save the world by either becoming Elden Lord, finishing the hunt, or linking the flame. Considering the fact that linking the flame doesn't actually stop darkness or reverse hollowing, it should push us to hopelessness. However, countless enkindled still jump at the opportunity to link the flame, even in Dark Souls 3. Knowing that we inhabit a rapidly decaying and dying world, knowing that the most we can do is extend the flame for a brief moment, we do not stop. It is mind boggling to think that there are still content creators who regularly talk about and play the Dark Souls trilogy 9 years after the final game came out. Despite completing the game countless times, I still find myself returning every so often. What more could there be to explore? The world has ended, and the flame is flickering on its last embers. There is nothing left to see. There is no good ending. We can't escape the end. Pretty much every NPC has already concluded that there isn't much time left. Just look at Gale. It's literally the end of the world. Regardless, they all push forward for their motives, knowing that it is meaningless. The world doesn't owe us anything. Our efforts can't force the world to change fundamentally. Souls games teach me to hope for a better world, even when it is ultimately impossible. This is, of course, contrary to any logic. What point is there in trying so hard? After all, the outcome after all, the outcome can't be influenced. This thought is always addressed in the form of the crestfallen warriors. Across every Souls game, there is at least one character who is hell bent on convincing you to give up, but they themselves haven't actually given up, if you think about it. We are always given the option of giving up, going hollow, when in fact, when you decide to quit Dark Souls, to the characters in game, you have essentially gone hollow. In the real world, it might often feel like you won't amount to much, that you can never see the effects of your efforts.
Flesh be consumed
The world
by
doesn't
the
owe you
sword
anything.
and rot.
We decide to keep going, improving, not because we are guaranteed a grand finale, but because we hope to make a difference. The materialization of this change, in and of itself, is utterly irrelevant. Actually seeing a change, actually seeing you yourself change the world, actually having an effect is not really as valuable than hoping that you might achieve it, believing that you can do it, and actually pushing towards it. Soler tried his hardest to find his own son. In his search, he went from a hopeful and fun knight to a distressed mess. Ultimately, he loses all hope and essentially ends up hollow. Just like us, he had his goals and hopes. However, upon realizing his helplessness, he decides to essentially give up, in a sense at least. He is lured in by a fake son and becomes content with this fake salvation. I refuse to accept a fake victory, yet I refuse to accept my hopelessness. I continue playing knowing full well there is no real victory at the end of the road. I simply progress back into the next new game cycle. This state allows me to hope that I can and will achieve my victory or reach my very own sun in a way, while accepting that it is simply not a real possibility. The game has ended decades ago at this point. There is no change in the end. There is only ever two options. You either link the flame or don't. And regardless of the option you make, the flame comes back few years later and the cycle repeats. You are not significant to the world. You can't ever actually have an impact. But you continue to try, not because you hope that your impact will actually materialize, not because you hope to achieve that perfection, but because you simply want to try to achieve that perfection. And in that hope of trying to reach that perfection or to reach your desired ending, the correct, the good ending, is what drives us to move forward.
Flesh be consumed by the
Perhaps challenge runs are a way to cope with this very feeling. The worlds from software are all dark and gloomy. There is little room for hope, and there is little to look forward to. From the perspective of an average undead, you're basically just waiting to go hollow at this point. However, we see time and again a great deal of NPCs defy this natural order. Going hollow is easy. There are only a few people left with even a shred of humanity, and yet many are still holding on. What hope are the undead holding on to stop them from going hollow? Why is Patches or the clerics still going? Perhaps from software's dark worlds are the greatest examples of a hopeful world. Humanity is capable of surviving not only because of logic and reason, but because we are willing to cling to some innate optimism, even when it is foolish to do so. At the end of the world, we see literal zombies clinging to their humanity, hoping to see better times. Elden Ring is a hard game. The DLC is even more brutal. There are no difficulty sliders. Even so, I have seen countless people beat all bosses hitless using a toothpick. Maybe the world of Elden Ring has more of an impact than we believe. I always have a great deal of trouble explaining how having no chance to succeed is actually a catalyst for hope. To be honest, I might be mischaracterizing it a bit, but my point is that knowing that you truly have no chance of success or even a chance of having any impact at all can be like a weight lifted over you. It allows you to truly work on yourself even without results. It separates the hard work and reward, making you work simply to do it. This must sound largely masochistic, I know, because it is. However, in moderation, in heavy moderation, such a mindset can allow you to have a certain degree of pure patience in the way many pray to God for salvation. You don't always expect anything to change. The outcome is surely the same, yet we don't. No, refuse to falter. So the question remains to be answered. Is it really worth anything to keep going? The reason I talk about this is because of a feeling I've had for many years now, but only recently started to really think about. I believe ever since my last 2 years of high school, I've always had this feeling of wanting to be number one. Later, or more recently, I realized it wasn't that I wanted to be the best or be number one. I simply wanted to reach a peak. I wanted to be perfect. In a sense, I wanted to become absolutely perfect at what I did, be it running, jumping, football, maths, science, English. I did not care. I simply wanted to achieve
Let your
perfection.
flesh be consumed by the
But
scarlet rot.
ultimately, I did not reach that. Yet I still tried. I always had this goal of achieving this peak, kind of, which I believe the series Climber really put this into perspective for me. In a sense, I do want to achieve something that has never been achieved, something that is, in a sense, perfect. For example, I want to climb the K2 east side for the first time. Nobody has done it. I want to be that person to reach that peak. I know it is not possible to become perfect. Of course, I knew that from a very young age. It is not realistically possible or even theoretically possible to become perfect. Because what is perfection? How do you run a perfect mile? How do you jump the perfect distance? There's only a certain peak you can hit, but you chase after certain perfection. Perhaps the story of Elden Ring and Soulsborne kind of reflect this innate chase, this innate hunger of man to chase perfection. In most of these games, you are up against literal gods, as I mentioned, be it outer gods, be it the eldritch gods of Bloodborne, or the Four Lords. At the end of the day, we have to go against these so-called gods who can be the ultimate perfect beings after all. When we go up against God in these games, when we finally beat them, we are essentially eclipsing perfection. We have achieved that dream, but we haven't. We are not perfect because the gods of Bloodborne are not perfect beings. There is no path to perfection because there is no perfection in this world. There is only the chase for it. Challenge runners try their best to emulate their very first run. In a run where they're still chasing that perfection. They just still want to gain some extra mastery, some new mechanic. They want to know everything, they want to become perfect. Perhaps Sekiro was the closest one to ever actually invoke this feeling of wanting to be perfect. I'm sure many people believe Ongball or other Sekiro YouTubers who do some insane mods are like genuinely perfect at the game. But I'm sure if you ask them, they would say they have a long way to go to become genuinely perfect. Because, as I said before, it is only something we can hope to achieve. It is a mountain that you can just barely see, as if to say you can technically see the sun, but you can't look at the sun. There is perfection up there. You know it's there. But the moment you look up, your eyes are blinded. You can't pinpoint. It is right there, is it? So you climb up higher to glimpse closer at it. But you never actually reach it. But you're content with that. Everyone is. We all accept that there is no real path to perfection. But we're still trying to find it. What is this innate lust for perfection? Why do we want to achieve this? I believe everyone, at a certain point, to a certain degree, wants to be perfect. It is a futile effort. I know I'm not the best at articulating my thoughts, especially when it comes to more abstract topics, but I hope I was able to get my
Let your
thoughts across.
flesh be consumed
With
like
this,
a
we're at the
scarlet
end of the video.
moth.
Hope you enjoyed and see you soon. Enjoy the fight.
The mark of a true lord. I'm sorry. I finally met my match. Your strength, extraordinary. The mark